No gavel here. Sorry, Bill, I forgot to bring the gavel. Call to order the JEDO board meeting. Today is Wednesday, February the 14th, 2024. We're in a little bit different location and very odd setup with sometimes backs to the public. And so this accommodation was made by the city. I want to thank the city for helping get this set up. As the city hall was not available, nor was the holiday building, and we moved our meeting up a little bit so we might be able to spend some time with our significant others on Valentine's Day. So with that being said, our first item.
Item 2, roll call. Commissioners Cook,
Here.
Mays,
Here.
Rippon,
Here.
Mayor Padilla,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Valdivia Alcala,
Here.
Council Members Banks,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
Council Members Hiller,
Here.
Ortiz, Kale, Miller, Dobler.
Would note that we do have a quorum today for the meeting. Our next item.
Okay, item 3, action item, approval of December 13th, 2023 JEDO board meeting minutes.
The board meeting minutes are contained within your packet, and these were distributed prior to the meeting. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to read through them. I did not note any changes. If there are any changes, any noted? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mayor Padilla. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Banks, seconded. Got to you a little faster, but fun. Yes.
Hello?
If we could have a roll call vote?
Commissioners Cook,
Yes.
Mays,
Yes.
Rippon,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Council Members Banks,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 7-0.
All right. Our next item.
Item 3B, review options for continued investment in the Astra Innovation Center.
Good afternoon. Stephanie Moran, Senior Vice President of Innovation for Go Topeka. I would first like to thank the voting members of JEDO who've taken the time prior to this meeting to review these presentations, ask and answer questions in preparation for this meeting. I will be bringing up Stan Wenzel with Buyer Realty, who will be presenting the status of where we are on the Innovation Center and providing a proposal for a plan to move forward.
Good evening. I am Stan Wenzel, Principal of BioRealty. Good afternoon, I guess. I was asked by Go Topeka to provide you this update. First off, I did just want to thank the board for its continued working partnership with us to work through some of these challenges. Also, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, present what's going to be a plan to phase the project. We've prepared a presentation. I'll try to make it brief, but please feel free to answer any questions throughout the process at any time in the presentation. There's a very brief agenda. Let's just jump into it. This is a slide from our September JEDO meeting. This is the last time I visited with you all. And we talked about how this project was suited for new markets tax credits, that we were going to try to leverage off of the success we had on the state and federal historic tax credit approvals, and also the success on the Base 2.0 grant. The idea at the time was with the new market tax credit plus signing up of a lab tenant, along with the existing incentive agreement and parking agreements, we could start construction without having to meet our 50% pre-leasing threshold and allow Go Topeka to terminate the short-term stub lease as well as the reimbursement obligation. During that board meeting in September, a very astute question was asked: what happens if new market tax credits are not obtained? And the answer I provided at that time was, well, we'll probably have to phase the project. We've been reviewing phasing for a while. We were reviewing it at that time, and we've continued to review it since. And the result of a phasing plan would be the same as the new markets in the sense that we would have a definitive construction start without the 50% pre-leasing requirement, and we'd be able to terminate the Go Topeka stub lease as well as the reimbursement obligation. Again, another slide from the September board meeting. I emphasized the readiness efforts we were making on the new market tax credits, and that we had several groups interested, and that I felt we would get an allocation in the fourth quarter of '23. There was a good chance of that. And I promised to report back by the end of October. We did that, and then on November 1st, I gave Stephanie a detailed report of where we were at. We were seeking $21 million of new market tax credit allocation. Unfortunately, we only got interest from 2 CDEs, and that total allocation was in the $11 to $15 million range. Those at that time were verbal commitments, which is what we expected in October. We didn't expect written, but we did expect those by now, and we actually have not obtained both CDE or written commitments. So the conclusion is that we do not believe we'll have sufficient CDE commitment for the project to support a new market tax credit financing. We think that we would need additional time to secure those CDEs, which could take as long as 3 to as much as 11 months, which would be the next allocation round. And we fully understand that that is unacceptable to this board, and frankly, it's unacceptable to our timing as well. We've been at this too long. So we go back to that astute question about if no new markets, what do we do? Well, with any project that has a gap between the available sources of funds and the cost of the project, typical solutions are we try to bring in an anchor tenant. Well, we know how difficult that is, especially with the buildings needing the significant renovation they need to be truly presentable. We can bring in other investors or opportunity in zone investors. We have explored that fully, and the challenge there is that they still too require higher levels of pre-leasing to provide adequate return on investment. So it leads us back to phasing of the project. One of the reasons why we're here is, as you well know, there's been almost a perfect storm of challenges facing development projects, whether it's this one or any other one. And I wanted to touch on that briefly, even though we've touched on it before, but also to show that there's some positive news on the horizon. One is in terms of construction cost escalation, as this graph from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows, we had a massive run-up from July, August of '21 through May, June, July of '23. The good news is that does seem like it's flattened, and we're back to more normal 2 to 3% escalation rates. Very good news. Secondly, interest rates, same phenomenon. This is a graph of the federal funds rate, but a massive run-up coming out of the COVID crisis. And again, flattening, and if you follow the Fed, you know they've signaled likely to be perhaps decreases later in 2024. What you may not know is there's also, in the backdrop of this, been continued value declines in commercial real estate. These are evidenced by some of the groups that track this data, like CoStar. And then likewise, there's been a commensurate decrease in the capital markets for commercial real estate. We've actually had a decline in total available capital. It's only happened once before in the past decade. But again, I think there's some positive news there, and we are returning back to normal levels of change in terms of construction costs and interest rates. And that's all we believe we need in order to make our phasing plan work. What is the phasing plan? It would involve deferring the Wilson building improvements to a second phase. We would complete the improvements to the middle and Woolworths building. We would also defer certain selected improvements that we feel aren't integral to the project financing on the first phase. We would hit a target budget of $14.5 million, which matches up with what we believe to be the available funding sources. And this would allow us to start construction, we believe, by July 1st, if not sooner. Here's a perspective of that middle building as well as the Woolworth building and what it would look like. Is, again, for those of you who don't remember, the middle building, we would largely have to rebuild that entire structure, and it provides most of the common area for the project and all the connection points and collaboration points for our innovation center. And then the Woolworth building is the building on the right. This is a rendering, again, from that middle building looking forward toward Kansas Avenue, what that will look like in the future. Here's a breakdown of the budget, and I'll just go through this quickly, but you'll see the bottom line, the total project cost declined $6.6 million. The biggest decline is, again, in the reducing scope and the design. Then the top line, the design and construction costs go down by about 2.9 million. The next biggest decline is by getting rid of the new market tax credits. That financing is very heavy in terms of reserves, legal costs, consultant fees, other fees, et cetera. That would go away. And then we'd add commensurate declines in interest and some of the soft costs because of the other cost reductions. The sources for this, again, the new market tax credits are gone. We would have the Go Topeka incentive grant for the 2.5, which is the original amount approved by this board in 2021. We would have the base grant that my team was successfully able to get awarded from Department of Commerce. We would have proceeds from the sale of tax credit, our equity, as well as a small senior loan making up the balance. Fully funded project. What do we need to do to make this happen? And to start construction by July 1? Well, first, we have a pretty significant design effort still ahead of us. We're in the early design development phase of design. We need to take those to working drawings. Secondly, we need all documents executed, and there's a flurry of them, most of which we control, but there are some like the lab, some of the tenant leases and the GMAX contract, or the tenant leases that we do not control. We need the property tax abatements approved and documented. Those have already been applied for. And then we'd need to avoid any sort of major material adverse change in the market, which I think we've given you an idea of, or defined what that means. It basically means we don't return to those abnormal rates of construction cost escalation and rate change. Right now, our next steps, we're hoping for your approval of this phasing plan. As soon as that is done, we're going to go back and reconfirm our costs and QRE estimates, which frankly we've done already in the past 30 days, at least on the QRE. QRE stands for Qualified Rehabilitation Expenditures. That's for the tax credits. But we will doubly reconfirm that. Simultaneously with that, we're going to release a slew of pre-development efforts, including the design, which will be done in packages. The demo design and foundation design will be the first packages. We will also turn loose the freight elevator repair and the lead-based paint and asbestos abatement exercises. So those are pre-development activities. We'll complete the documentation that I mentioned before, and construction start on or before July 1.
Mr. Wenzel, if we can start, I think the first question that I would have is, we have not hit the 51% for the pre-signing. And at this time, I think that we're only at 25%.
That's correct.
Is there enough interest? I know there's a desire within the business community to have a bio research facility, innovation center here in our capital city. But from your perspective, having done this from coast to coast, is there enough interest in Topeka, Kansas to warrant moving forward with this now $14 million project with additional costs to come?
Well, keep in mind, it's a mixed-use project, right? It has the lab bio elements, but it's also going to have probably some ground floor retail elements that'll support it. And it also will have the offices of Go Topeka in it. But my short answer to your question is yes. I mean, we already have a diagnostic testing company signed up for this. What we have available is our primary lab space in the building is going to be our third floor, which frankly is the best space in the entire project, overlooking Evergy Plaza. So that space is ideally suited for lab. We have access to the rooftop, so we can do all the vertical penetrations we needed. We have the appropriate floor loads. So, in terms of total laboratory space in the project, right now we're talking about a 50,000 square foot project. We will probably have on the order of 20,000, 20 or so. I think there's more than adequate demand for that. And I think frankly it's going to drive us to probably do something else elsewhere.
Can we go back 2 slides?
Sure.
Well, one more, sorry, 3. One more. There's the one to the funding sources, there we go.
That one?
Where you had your funding sources, one forward.
Sure.
There we go. All right, so as I look at this, you're looking at a commitment of Go Topeka incentive grant, that would be our piece
Correct.
through JEDO, of $4,518,000
Uh-huh.
to do a phased-in approach. We have $1.2 million in the base 2.0 grant.
Right.
But then the bulk of your funding is coming through these sales tax credits, the new market tax credits that we still don't have written commitments for.
No, actually, we have no new market tax credit
Okay.
in this financing. We have historic tax credits.
Okay,
Okay, and the historic tax credits are both the federal and state historic tax credit. We have approval from the State Historic Society and the National Park Service on both parts 1 and parts 2 of those credits.
Okay.
The only part remaining is what we call part 3, and that is when we build the building per the plans and specifications, and they sign off that we did what they previously approved. The other element of that is we have purchasers of those tax credits. We have term sheets for the purchase of those credits, and we have backup term sheets for the purchase of those credits. So the new market tax, or he got me.
yeah, I'm sorry.
The historic tax credit piece is quite well put to bed.
So-
And it rivals in size of your grant.
So the new market tax credits are completely done.
Completely gone. There's no new markets in this strategy, and that's evidenced by the previous slide. See at the bottom, new markets tax credit. Before, we had 2.25 million,
Okay.
and now it's 0. All that's gone. It saves us on the cost side, but we lose a huge funding source.
Now, the alternative to doing a phased-in approach, if this board was to say, we're done, the cost, we would have to pay through the stub lease, correct?
Yeah, and the stub lease should run through, I believe, March of 2025.
And that would be a cost of in excess of $800,000?
It would be an additional there's a slide coming up on that. So we've paid about $500,000 to date on that. There would be an additional $250,000 in stub lease cost, and then there's also $189,000 in reimbursement agreement for pre-closing activities that would be owed. So we owe about $450,000 to $500,000 if we were to terminate the stub lease today.
So the total cost, though,
Would
is,
be, all in, it would be, we would have paid in about $1 million into the project.
okay. So we're $1 million into the project if we stop,
Correct.
where we're at right now. We're $4.5 million if we continue to go forward.
Correct.
Okay. Questions from the board? Deputy Mayor Valdivialcala?
Thank you. This is my first time at a JEDO meeting, so bear with me. I did have a couple of questions. I understand you're located on both coasts, Bio Realty. You
Yeah.
have a number of projects like this, much
Correct.
larger than this. And we've talked about the number of pitfalls that have happened from COVID to price increases to whatever. Are all of your projects moving this slow?
I would say every one of them is facing the same set of difficulties. Everyone is facing the rise in interest rate at an unprecedented rate and the rise in construction costs. And, the projects vary by type. I think last meeting, the group asked me about our North Carolina project. Somebody asked a very good question. How does that differ from this project? And it's similar because it's got speculative element. We're leasing it up on a speculative basis. It's laboratory. It's facing the similar challenges, and we're working through them. I will say in that project, the county is, in that case, agreed to lease our entire first building if we do not get it leased, because they see the value of bringing life sciences and laboratory space to the community. But it's taking creative solutions at times, and I can tell you what we have faced in the last 3 or 4 years is really unprecedented. A lot of developers are just not in business right now. They're just on the sideline. Our projects are proceeding, but they're just proceeding and requiring a heck of a lot of work.
Okay, so that's a yes. They're kind of moving on the same slower trajectory.
Yes.
And also, are you responsible for, I know that when I had a meeting with a couple of folks about this project, that the understanding that the anchor was lost some time ago.
Right.
Who's responsible for finding an anchor? Is it BioRealty or is it Shannon's group? I mean, who is responsible
Well,
for that?
when we were brought into this assignment, again, a lot of you are new, and this has been going on a while, so I understand not knowing the history. But the reason what brought us to the assignment was knowing we had the anchor and a couple of other small tenants and felt we could get to that 50% leasing. In fact, when we put forth that $200,000 that are subject to the reimbursement agreement, we signed the stub lease. We even outlined that this was all under the assumption that the anchor agreement lease would sign. It was called a key agreement in those documents. So we made all that investment on that basis that that anchor was there. Now, we're all in this together. Things happen, right? That tenant didn't make. So we are now trying to make this work. But I think short answer to your question is the understanding was the city would contribute that. And that's what is needed for a project like this, because it's going to take a local stakeholder to commit early to a building like that. These buildings require substantial rehabilitation, and I can't show it to the marketplace and realistically attract a tenant where they're at today. So it took that kind of commitment. Unfortunately, it didn't materialize.
Right, right. Sounds like a number of things didn't materialize. So thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Duncan?
Thank you. Is there any correlation between the difficulty in getting leases by the fact that as of right now, you can't tell anybody when the place is going to open?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's a great question. I mean, one of the big focuses right now is having a concrete start date. So we can, if you guys are fortunate enough to give us, if you give us your approval, we will immediately start marketing the July 1 start date. And we're, hopeful that will help our marketing efforts. And it certainly gives at least people timeframes of when the ultimate space can be delivered. The other thing it's going to help is when we just get in there and start showing activity. It's one thing to communicate to people the vision, but it's another thing to actually be doing it.
So I guess my extension of that question then is, I know that phase 2 would be contingent upon those new market tax rebates, but
No, it would not be.
Well,
okay, so, well, my question is I guess that's my question. Is there an opportunity for phase 2 to start earlier if you hit the 51% once this is announced and you get a new tenant, that kickstarts that as opposed to it doesn't and you're waiting for any of those new market?
Absolutely, absolutely. We talked about this with Stephanie and her team today. Our hope is that the phase 2, there's no pause between phase 1 and 2. Frankly, for us, the minute we demobilize our construction team on site, we pull them off site, have to remobilize, we add substantial cost to the project. So our hope is that we get 1 or 2 pre-lease tenants, we go phase 2, and we just roll right into that. But I don't want to promise, I live in a world based on the capital commitments, right, and what I have lined up. And right now, we have $14.5 million of funding sources circled, and we feel we're about tapped out, and that's what we need to manage to.
No, well, I asked that because I do think it's important to point out, or at least just so I understand that it's not totally dependent upon those tax credits.
Yeah, well,
there's also an opportunity the other can get you there also.
Absolutely, and just to clarify, the plan right now is new market tax credits will not be utilized on this project. But the plan is we will utilize the federal and state historic tax credits, which we already have approval on and already have contracts to monetize.
So I don't know how better way to ask this, but it sounds, assuming we approve the phased deal and there's a few tax abatements or a tax abatement that needs, is that all that's left for this? If we do this, is it really going to get built starting July 1? I don't mean that facetiously, I just mean, is this all we're waiting for?
It is a great question. I think this slide tells us what we need to do to start construction. I would like to tell you, I guarantee you it'll start July 1. But I can't. The reality is we need to get the documentation done. I've communicated to the team here. We're in the letter of intent stage. We have all this stuff signed up on letters of intent. I need those letters of intent to convert to binding contracts. Number 3, we need the property tax abatement approved. We've got that applied. We feel confident about it, but it needs to happen. Design is complete controllable. We'll get that done. But that's what needs to happen, the documentation and the property tax. And we need to not have a crazy material adverse change in the market like we had in '22, you know? But absent that, this project's going to happen. And I fully understand this board, July 1 is, you know, your view is probably that's it. Frankly, my team has invested $1.5 million to date in the project. We've got no return on that investment. We're about to sign up to put another $1 million to $2 million into it. We're about to sign up to guarantee a small senior construction loan. We think we've demonstrated our commitment to this project, but we are also ready for July 1 to be it. If it doesn't happen, my commitment to this board, if one of these things fails, I will notify Stephanie and the team immediately. But I feel very confident, much more confident today than I did a month ago when I suggested this phasing plan.
Great, thank you very much.
Councilmember Banks, and then Council Deputy Mayor.
My mind is stuck on the written agreement. At this point, where would the written agreements fit into those steps that we need to start our project?
It's both in the reimbursement agreement and in the stub lease. In the reimbursement agreement and the stub lease, they outline key agreements that need to be finalized for the project to proceed. Those include the incentive agreement from Go Topeka, the anchor tenant lease, which will not materialize, and it included, there's one or two other key agreements that were memorialized in those documents.
I think your question is on the incentive agreement that we have with Go Topeka for the $4.5 million. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes. So I can speak to that a little bit. I actually already have the invitations out to the attorneys to start that immediately following this, assuming we are able to proceed forward. We'll start those conversations on that draft agreement. We already have a draft out to Buyer Realty, and we will be making some additional changes based on the outcomes of this meeting to that. But that is ready to start negotiations as soon as we finish this meeting today, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, just to confirm, after what Councilman Duncan asked, either, Stephanie, sorry. Either one of you, thank God Karen Hiller is right to my left. She knows the world. So I'm wondering, just for clarification from what Duncan asked, even though we're seeing on or before July 1st, if we would approve this phased-in approach, there's actually no guarantee that July 1st is going to be it because of all the forms you're saying that need to be signed and.
Yeah, I mean, we need final documentation. We need final tax credit abatements approved. And that's just a reality. I'd love to tell you what you want to hear, but I've got to tell you the facts.
I'm going by this.
Yeah, and again, my commitment is if there's any hiccup in any of that, I will, of course, notify everyone immediately. Mm-hmm. I can tell you also that our confidence level is heightened than it was even a month ago, and that's because we have backups for most of those term sheets. So even if we were to have a problem with one, we would substitute it with a backup. But again, this is a complex project with multiple capital sources. I would love to tell you it was as simple as us just putting in equity or equity in debt. It's not that simple, and these elements do have to come to final documentation.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor.
I'd like to ask you something about what you mentioned about, and a question asked by Commissioner Cook about the desire for this kind of space, this need for this kind of space. It's been my understanding that there have been multiple opportunities come to us, but we don't have that space that this would develop into. So can give us an idea of how critical this kind of space is to growing even more so our focus on being that Center for Animal Health and research and so forth.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in on this one a
Sure.
little bit. So I can tell you I've had conversations as recently as Friday with our animal health corridor partners asking when this lab space will be available. So there is no lab space in the market like this available, and so there are people looking for it. If we had it today, I could be getting leases going with folks. It's just that a lot of times in this animal health corridor with these startups, they're looking for space now. It's not, I'm looking for space a year from now, 18 months from now. It's, I have a new product, a new technology, a new alternative protein that I'm working on, and I need to do the lab work now. And so they're really looking for that space in an immediate sense. And so I know the KU Innovation Park is full, Kansas City Animal Health Corridor is looking for space as well. And I was at K-State yesterday, and we've got the same situation. So there's just a lack of this type of space. And I think it's, if we have it, we will be able to lease it, but people are not willing to commit a year out from now because they need their technologies today.
Thank you. The other thing, and it's been asked a couple of times with regards to that July 1st, I know that all things go well, you'll try to come in on or before. Are there any provisions if you go beyond that by, say, a month or so, any kind of penalties, as it were, for not meeting that date? An incentive to work really hard to get to July 1st.
Yeah, and again, I would emphasize that, we're the ones that have capital out too right now.
Sure.
We've had it out for 2 years, we're getting no return. Frankly, we would rather just wrap up if we don't get it done by July, we'd rather just move on. I mean, we haven't factored in thought of penalties and all that. I think we feel we've come up with a very, capable, complex solution to this that works though. And if this doesn't work, I don't know how much more, we're going to be willing to leave our capital out there and not have an idea when the project starts. So I think we ought to make this happen by July 1 or if you guys want to move on, that we perfectly understand.
Yeah. With that too, I will say that if we receive approval today to move forward with this phased approach, we will work on that incentive agreement, and it would come back to JEDO to approve the final agreement and terms, so you guys will have a look at that agreement before it is approved with BioRealty. So.
Well, I know there's a lot of anticipation, and if you've been getting inquiries, that means there are others talking about it outside of Shawnee County, looking at what we're doing with this and how to solve the financial setbacks because of inflation and so forth. I would personally hate to see us just start from scratch and start all over, because that's another, as you said, maybe 11 months out again. And that's even more, I think, frustrating to the market that's looking to us. And I think it's a little frustrating to the general public who has been looking to see that activity, to see some construction start there. And once that construction gets started, I think you'll see even more expectations and anticipation of what changes that can bring to the city of Topeka, and particularly to that animal health corridor. So I'm encouraged that you've worked to find this phased solution, because it gives you an opportunity to show what you can do, what the space can be, and the potential for the remaining space to be developed. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't disagree with you that it's been frustrating. We're now nearly 2 years plus into this project since Wolf's closed their doors and this property became vacant. It's a vacant property on Kansas Avenue, right across the street from Evergy Plaza. At the same time, this board has already expended in excess of $500,000 to get to the point that we're at. We're asking for a commitment of an additional $4 million to proceed forward in a phased approach. The loss of the anchor was a huge blow to this project. Not getting above 31% in commitment, pre-commitment, was a blow to this project. Not having the new market tax credits commitment is a blow to this project. The question becomes, as this board, are we throwing good money after bad? By a commitment of an additional $4 million, are we going to wind up with a project that's failed to launch? Or is this a project that is just not going to work due to conditions beyond our control? The economy, interest rates, construction costs, All of those things that we do not have any control over, nor does BioRealty. And so I guess at this point where we're at is a juncture, a crossroads. Do we just pay out the remaining $500,000 that's on the stub lease? Or do we commit to an additional $4 million? And that's why this is a very important decision for this board. Yeah, Deputy Mayor?
My question, Chair, would be, you're making really good points here, so if we don't, can we talk about if we don't, or is that not allowed in
That's
the rules?
actually, Ms. Moran has got all that information
Well-
for us as to what we do.
Can,
Yeah.
go ahead. I want you to finish, but I want to respond to him.
Okay.
So I don't understand, the view of spending additional $4 million. First of all, this is the same amount that was approved by JEDO
Right.
in 2021, okay? And the project, actually, ironically, is the same cost that you approved. And ironically, we've come back and had the square footage measured, and it's actually bigger than we thought, and it's pretty close to even the square footage you originally approved. That money is not going to go in unless we are prepared to close and start the project. If we fail to deliver by, we don't have all these elements together, we're not asking for a JEDO grant. We're asking for the JEDO grant to be funded if we achieve all this documentation, get the property tax abatement, and are ready to sign our guaranteed max price with our general contractor. So that, I don't know where the view is that money is gone today. That money is only going to go be expended if we are constructing a project.
But if we were traveling down the road on a path to a destination, along that path, there are different times where you might see the off-ramp. And you have to make a decision. Do I continue on towards my destination, or do I take the off-ramp? This is really our last chance to take that off-ramp, if that's the way this board, and I'm not advocating for us to take the off-ramp. I'm not advocating for us to not fund it. But at the same time, I think that we as a board need to make sure that we are fully aware. We have several new members here today. We're talking about a huge commitment of taxpayer dollars to a project that at this point has hit a lot of roadblocks. Again, things that are not beyond the control of BioRealty, and I'm not trying to bring any disbursement to BioRealty. You have no control over interest rates. And if you do have control, can you lower them down a little bit? You have no control over construction costs, and if you do, can we lower those down a little bit? You have no control over market conditions. Those are things that are outside of your control, and it's bigger questions.
But God forbid we're not able to deliver on this, okay? Something doesn't come together. We can't get it done by July 1. Don't you have an off-ramp July 1?
I guess that's a question for Ms. Miranda to maybe answer.
Yeah, so
Wait,
let's
wait.
talk through some. Oh, yeah.
Wait. I'm
Sorry.
still waiting for mine to get answered here, okay? Okay, so my question is, and having had some conversation about this, I think we all know that even if this doesn't work out, we're still going to have to end up putting out more money in some way as right of first purchase in all of this that I'm learning about. But with the taxpayer money, I think all of these questions are absolutely valuable and valid and needed. Again, I don't think it's anything personal at all. And with newbies on board, I think there may be repetitive questions, but they're still worth, the repetition for us to be able to wrap our minds around this. So I would look forward to these additional presentations so we can start discussing that.
All right, so let's just kind of talk through options here. Okay, so really the options we have at this point to kind of move forward with this project or not. The phased construction approach that we've been talking about. So that would have construction potentially beginning on or before July 1st. And as we talked about, that's $14.5 million total investment in phase 1. That would be the center building and the Woolworths building that we've talked about, where the bulk of the lab space is, because we believe that's the most critical part of this project. With that, we have to complete the agreements that Stan has mentioned. The incentives agreement is with Go Topeka and BioRealty, and like I said, that would be the agreement that we would bring back here for approval on the $4.5 million and how that is tied to the project. The parking agreement with the city has already been completed, and so like Stan has mentioned, probably the two largest leases that we need to work on would be the lab tenant lease that we have identified and Plug and Play's lease. So those are the two that are really kind of out of the control of this team. We can certainly help move that along, but those are the ones that we have the least control over. Again, I think we have right of first offer on the building, and we'll talk about that here in a second, and the termination. I do believe that this is the best way to move this project forward to support the innovation hub that we're trying to build here with the animal health corridor and also ag tech with Plug and Play. We've talked about new market tax credits. Waiting on those delays this project another 3 to 11 months, and I just really don't think that that's a real viable solution to move forward. I would like to see construction get started on this. I think it's, like I said, I just think it's critical infrastructure to what we're trying to do with the innovation network here. Terminating the agreement, as Commissioner Cook has brought up, is our other option at this point. We will have $450,000 to $500,000 that we will have to pay out. We have to date paid $550,000 on stub lease with BioRealty. That would be that $450,000 to $500,000 comprises about half of that is continued stub lease payments. That runs through the end of February 2025. And then there, like I mentioned, $181,000 in the pre-closing costs that were part of the reimbursement agreement. That would leave us putting about $1 million into this project and having about $4.8 million left from the original JEDO funding of the $5.8 that was approved for this project to either talk about right of first offer on the purchase of that building and or restarting this project in another manner. To Stan's point, I mean, that decision can be made today. We've got the off-ramp today with that. You would also have that off-ramp if construction hadn't started by July 1st. That decision can be made at that point as well. So that's kind of where we're at today with our options on this project.
Councilmember Duncan, you had indicated you had a question.
Yeah, I just had a comment.
Yeah.
No, so I was here when we started this conversation initially, and at that time, part of that conversation we even started was because the market is ripe for this type of facility. It was a few years ago, and it's only grown in the last several years, especially as INBAF is finally fully opened, and those businesses have now fully sort of made their trek to Manhattan and the corridor. I trust our people who are telling me there's still a market here and that they can bring those people in. I think from my perspective, our frustrations may be with how we've gotten to this point, less about what we're trying to accomplish. So I always try to break that stuff down as, okay, is what we're still trying to accomplish have value? And I think it does. I think it has enormous value to Topeka, and from everything I've read and seen and folks I've tried to talk to, I think we will get folks into this lab and do a pretty good job of filling it up. So I try to disassociate myself from the frustration of where we are in terms of why it's taken so long and what that reason is. For me, it sounds like we finally hit that point where it looks like it's going to happen, and I guess in a few months, if it's not, I feel confident enough that we won't have sunk too much in the next 5 months and be able to pull that trigger then, which is why I'm pretty comfortable at this point moving forward.
If I could respond to that real
Yes.
fast. I would just like to say, we have run this back through Innovation Advisory Board with all of these same options we're presenting to you, and it's also gone to Go Topeka Board, just to ensure that we have the continued support of our advisory boards as well as our stakeholders in the community to make sure that everyone still believes this is the right approach.
Councilmember Hiller and then Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you. Let's see if I can move this over so I'm looking at you. If you could talk, my question has to do with getting you to talk a little bit more about the prospective tenants, what the market is out there. Personally, I was excited. I was on this board when we started Plug and Play. I've walked through the building. It's an exciting building. I was excited about Plug and Play and that location in terms of bringing a whole new professional element into our downtown, mixing it up and so on. I also, for the same reasons, have been excited about having the KDHE labs coming online at 12th and Topeka Boulevard, 7 blocks away or whatever that is. Could you refresh for me what percentage of the space, and if you want to separate it into the two
Right.
buildings and then the whole set of 3, is you're expecting to have tenants that are going to use the lab
Yeah.
versus not. And then talk a little bit more about how you've mentioned the labs are full in Lawrence and in Manhattan. Talk a little more about what you're seeing as a demand of people in the US and also what the interest has been from plug and play and demand there.
Right. So as I go back to, we'll start with plug and play, which was your first question. We are starting to see interest from plug and play partners in relocating to the area and or working with our resource partners in the area. And so my challenge at the moment is I have a couple of those who are interested in coming back doing clinical trials, pilot programs, R&D. And so I'm looking at our other outside sources to see where I can make that happen. We're working with our K-State partners to see if we can use their R&D labs and their clinical trial space to do some of that. We're also having conversations with other working spaces to see if I can find space to put those plug and play tenants temporarily, at least while we're having these conversations. So it's critical really to have that environment to connect those startups. What we're seeing, especially out of this last fall cohort, is we've got multiple collaborations coming out of that group. And so, you know, I've got 3 or 4 startups that are in different technologies, all working together. One of them's looking to come back here for about 6 weeks this spring to work with several resource partners and our other local startups in the area. And that's exciting. That's what we wanted to see happen. And so it's just having that space to make that happen. A lot of these startups initially are looking for 500 to 1,000 square feet in lab space. So if you take 3rd floor of Woolworths, for example, that's 11,000 square feet. I mean, you can put a dozen labs easily up in that space where you could have a dozen different companies working in there. Or it could be larger spaces. If it's somebody who's looking for, you know, they're kind of in phase 2 and they're looking more in that 2,000 to 5,000 square feet to really expand upon their idea, you can build out those spaces. I think the lab tenant that we are looking at is in that 5,000 to 6,000 square foot range, correct?
Yeah, so right now, we have one lab tenant in the phase 1, about 6,000 square feet. And then you mentioned plug and play in addition to all the opportunities she talked about. Plug and play is also under letter of intent to lease about 6,000 square feet.
So the plug and play team would also be officed out of there, which then also becomes an attractive concept for them working with those startups locally in that center.
You know, this is maybe a strange comment, but if there is a blessing about the loss of our anchor tenant, it's the mix of the tenancy in the building. You know, you mentioned about bringing a new energy and lab space and innovation and all that. Our anchor that we had was more, you know, medical, you know, that kind of testing oriented. We had, you know, there was some concerns of whether or not that would bring the element we want. Now, if we go full 3rd floor lab, I think it's more true to that concept.
I would say what we see in the other partners in the area is you see kind of phase 1, which is what I see this innovation center as, is kind of that entry-level space. You're bringing those startups in that are at the very kind of launching phase of their business. They need that smaller space to get started. Then that leads you into kind of the phase 2 space, which is that 2,000 to 5,000. And then longer term, what you've seen with some of our other partners in the areas, then they're building their phase 3, which is, okay, those partners love being part of the network, and now they're looking for 5,000 to 10,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet. And so that's what kind of drives the next phases of these. It's really kickstarting that initial phase.
Thank you.
Did I answer everything, or did I miss anything?
That's very encouraging. I just wanted to refresh on
Yeah.
what that market, more details about what
Yeah.
the market looked like.
There's some really exciting collaborations with a couple of these partners coming up.
Okay.
You know, I can't quite disclose those yet for NDA purposes, but it's really exciting to see the network evolving. We got 3 or 4 pieces connecting through that, and that's what we're looking for out of this center.
Well, that's what I hoped to hear,
Yeah.
but I wanted to get an idea from you. Across the table, I have a vacant former dry cleaning facility in my district, and our staff from Public Works has looked at every single vacant garage in the county. So get hold of us if you need some
Okay.
temporary spaces.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
Thank you, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Chair, just a couple more questions. So can we do a what-if scenario
Sure.
here? Okay. So let's say that there was a termination of the contract, and then you have the right of first offer. Would
Yes.
that be something that y'all would take up?
I think that would come back to conversations with the group to see if that's what, that would trigger another conversation with this group to say, do we want to move forward with right of first offer on that? And so that would require another meeting to have that
Okay.
conversation.
So if the contract was terminated, and is that, in your view, really starting back from scratch?
Yes, so if the contract's terminated, we are parting ways with BioRealty as the developer, which means we need to identify a new developer. We're going to need to identify new funding sources. So in essence, you are starting that project over, whether it's we purchase the building and start that over, or we don't purchase the building and we start over with something completely new. So
Would the focus still be on the animal health corridor?
I would say that is the base focus, but I don't want to exclude other areas of innovation, because what you tend to see with these plug-and-play startups is you see a lot of conversations where you may have a insurance technology, for instance. Well, there's pet insurance, right? So you can connect those pieces across multiple industries, so I don't want to rule out that it's just animal health, but I think that would probably be our initial focus.
And with the 7/1 date on here that is plastered all over everywhere, so is that something that's being added into an incentive agreement for sure? I mean, that's the bottom line, this will be added into incentive agreement, and if not, then it would be, there may be
Right.
A, B, and C, and D, not maybe, but there will be A, B, and C, and D.
And that's where we would draft the incentives agreement with those different with those different pieces in it, bring it back to you to see if that's what we want to approve, or if there's other edits that this group wants to make to that incentive agreement before we would move forward with it.
Okay, thank you.
And a
Mayor?
follow-up on that, if we move forward with the July 1st, are we setting, are you able to say, Stan, if this gets approved, when can construction start? When will we start seeing people on site doing something?
The goal is July. That's the date. So we plan to have.
Okay,
July 1 is the date of construction start.
okay.
That's when we plan to have people mobilized on site. You will see activities there or before.
That's what I want to see is activity.
Yep.
Yeah,
And one other thing I did want to touch on, obviously not my favorite topic, you guys talking about getting a new developer, okay? But keep in mind, the challenges we are facing on this project, besides all the one-time challenges we've had, this is just a challenging environment to do a project of this type. There's a reason why there's not one of these on every corner. And the economic challenges we faced will be faced by anybody else. But frankly, they'll be worse. And they'll be worse for a couple of reasons. One is we're uniquely positioned in a way where we can take advantage of some of the tax attributes of this project, which very few people are. And then number two, we've accepted at this point a below market return on this project. There's metrics out there as to what is a typical market return for something like this, and we're well below those thresholds. We're actually doing it because we want to deliver on what we said the vision is here, and two, it's important for us to do that. We think doing an innovation center in Topeka is a really good story to have for, this is a heck of a tough project with a lot of complex sources behind it. Frankly, we do it here, we can do it a lot of places. And so that's why we're here, and I hope you don't lose sight of that. I hope you approve this, because I know if you don't, it's going to be tough sledding going forward.
Commissioner Mays?
A couple of comments and questions. First question, though, just out of curiosity, really, why the one building and not the other?
Really, that boils down to the lab space. The way that the buildings are laid out, the bulk of that lab space goes into the old Woolworths building because of where the ductwork is that would support those labs. That is not as readily available on the Wolf side. You could potentially do a small portion of the back end of Wolf's, like on the third floor, but really the bulk of that lab space is slated to be in the Woolworths building, and we believe that's the most critical part to get going.
Okay, and then if we were to continue on with a phased approach, do you think the possibility of ongoing construction is going to hinder your ability to lease the other side of the property?
Just to clarify.
Well, it's like if you're buying a home in a new neighborhood and there's a vacant lot next door they're about to start construction on, you kind of think twice about, like, do I want to sleep here knowing that they're going to be banging on
Yeah.
stuff at 5 in the morning?
Yeah, fair question. I actually think it's going to be an asset, not a liability. Keep in mind, the example you talked about, you're looking at a home that's ready to move in. Right now, we have no space that's ready to move in. So what it does is it signals to the people that might be interested, I assume you're talking about phase 2 of the Wolf's.
Right, yeah.
They're going to see activity going on next door. They're going to see the center building being redeveloped. It's not very hard for them at that point to realize, A, we're real, and B, this is happening. What we're doing to the Wolf's building is, we're largely rehabbing it. We're not doing anything near on the scale of what we're doing to the middle building. So I think while there will be some dust and inconvenience and noise to deal with, I think overall it's a big net positive. It shows timing and commitment.
Okay.
Stan, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate the conversation. I think a lot of great points have been made. But I mean, when I look at these 3 options on the surface, I personally think that terminating the agreement is not in the best interest of the taxpayers. I think spending $1 million to have nothing to show for it is something that you'd see at the federal government and not at the local level. $1 million is a lot of money to us, and to just spend it and walk away, I think is not a good use of that money. And then the other thing I would say is, we all of us have construction projects going on in our level of government, and everything is coming in over budget. So, I mean, we know that these challenges are real, and when I look at this, I think, improvising and doing a phased construction project is probably the smartest thing to do right now. And quite frankly, I appreciate the pivot more than I would appreciate it if you came back and asked us for another $15 million. Because I think there's a lot of projects that's what they would do. They'd come back and say, well, guys, we just can't do it unless we get another $10, $15 million. And so, you're staying within the budget that was allocated and saying we're going to get what we can get done, and I appreciate that, so.
Mr. Wenzel, I did have a question as to the Wolf's Building. Prior discussion that we've had at JEDO and at other meetings for Wolf's, that space was mainly for congregate space and office space. Is that accurate, or is that my recollection? Or?
Well, we envision the ground floor will likely go retail. We can see a large restaurant use or coffee with something behind it. The second floor, we actually have a co-working operator we're talking to that we think we can make in that phase 2 space likely. The third floor frankly can accommodate a variety of uses. It really doesn't work well for lab for the reasons Stephanie talked about, also the way the floor loads and vibration issues work. But it could work for office condos. It could even, there's a variety of things you could do on that third floor.
Okay.
So, that's my vision, but you and I know how, what the market will tell us will probably be a little
I
different.
think we've talked about it could connect to that 3rd floor for the labs tenants to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
offices.
and that's our hope too, is that when we identify a lab tenant for the 3rd floor of Woolworth, that they force us to do Wolf's by saying, well, we want to put our labs over in Woolworth, but we need more supporting administrative and office space for it. Can we take the 3rd floor of Wolf's? And that would, I'm sure everyone would be disappointed, that force our hands to go ahead and go with phase 2.
Okay.
That's what we're hoping for.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at this like right now, like where we are, I feel wary either way. Worried about if terminating the contract, all the additional costs that we could run into and starting from square one. And obviously the push for me is always, and I've told you this already when we've met, it is taxpayer money. The other part is about the wariness of nothing firm with 7-1. I agree that if it could go in the trajectory that you all are saying, that that is the best course. At the same time that I agree, I'm just telling you, there's a lot of wariness, and I hope that our incentive agreements are strong. Weighing it right now, I get very concerned about a contract cutting off completely and what we could be opening ourselves up to with additional a multitude of unknowns.
And
Thank you, Chair.
I certainly understand that, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. You know, having been in this job for a couple of years now, I do truly believe that this innovation center is critical to our innovation strategy and moving it forward in a material way. And I can say from my perspective, I'm fully committed to pushing to get these agreements done in a timely fashion so we can get this moving, because like I said, I have people calling me all the time looking for space, and I want to be able to tell somebody yes.
Commissioner Rippon?
Stephanie, have you put a pencil to how much revenue we could possibly generate from our lease agreements?
Well, we don't own the building, so I'm not.
All right, I know that.
Any other comments? Councilmember Banks?
Sitting here and thinking about where we are right now in this project, I'm starting to feel a little excited about the opportunity for our city and taxpayers right now. I appreciate our chair and the helpful comments that you made about points that we should consider. And I just wanted to make that comment. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Commissioner Rippon, maybe I answer your question a different way on the revenue side.
Okay.
The revenue that we're looking at is the ability to bring in new companies to the area, and the revenue that impacts our economy with by having new businesses, especially as they start up manufacturing and growth of those businesses here in the region.
Stephanie, if I may, I'm
Yes.
sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I haven't heard, we talk about plug and play and we're bringing in these different cohorts and so forth. And some, they come, then they leave. Some come and then they want to come back. And I think that's a potential that maybe we haven't really given a lot of thought to, because that's the whole idea, at least I got it from plug and play, is that we don't want you to just come here and get started and get your feet on the ground. We want you to see this as the place you want to build your company and stay permanently. So it's not just come in, leave, and start somewhere else. It's come in and stay here. So the more that we have in place to entice them to stay here, I think the better off we are. I mean, otherwise, we're just training ground for other people. And I think that's the thing that we need to really kind of stress, is that we can grow our number of businesses by being that place that gave them their start.
Agreed.
And if we can continue to build that opportunity in the community, then there's more likelihood that they would stay here with us. So that's something I just want to bring up, because I hadn't heard that connection, or that extension of what could happen as we continue to bring in the plug and play cohorts.
And that's the idea. By having this center, you have that connectivity, you have that stickiness to the community for those folks to be here, because we can connect them in one place with all of those resources and the things that they need to grow their business.
Any other questions? At this time, we are to a spot of a motion. We have 3 different options that have been identified by Ms. Moran for us to consider. The board always has the opportunity to adopt their own 4th one if they so choose, if somebody has a more innovative idea, but is there a motion before the board?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, were you going to take public comment on this issue?
I would turn to our Robert's Rule of Order,
I signed up for public comment.
You signed up for public comment. This is not public comment.
I signed up for
But,
public
if I
comment.
can finish,
for
sir,
this
if I can
for this
finish,
issue
sir.
Also, sir.
You have the ability to take public comment whenever you want.
okay. Is there a person who wants to offer public comment? Mr. McClure?
One, thank you for the opportunity.
We have a time limit. Remember, this is not the county.
I got you,
All
sir.
right.
Hey, listen, this is JEDO's hotel. Take the off-ramp. This will be your hotel. It's going to happen. If there were a market for this, it would be there. We don't have a shortage for space in Topeka. Let's say he's got a bunch of great ideas and there's a bunch of nice people that brought it forward. But there's plenty of places to do real estate deals. You can subsidize deals into success. I've been in this guy's shoes. Man, I've danced. And that's what I saw today. This would be a perfect deal for Cody Foster out at Westridge Mall. Cody's a good guy to deal with. And I'm telling you what's going to happen. There are a couple of wise people in here that didn't vote to fund that hotel. And you're going to be grateful for that later. But I'll tell you something, you're going to regret today. This will be your hotel. This is the wrong way to be. This is the wrong place to put money in today. You got to get out of the real estate business. Let the market decide. You got to quit trying to create a market. It's the wrong place for our tax dollars. You could take take the off-ramp now, and start thinking about the money that you may put into that deal, and start funding little deals in the neighborhoods where a guy needs a sewer extension, or a guy needs some infrastructure. Economic development starts in the neighborhoods. And if all that money we spent downtown, one of the existing owners of the building didn't jump on it, that's telling you something. Thanks.
As I've opened up the floor to anybody for public comment, is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we are back to the pleasure of this board.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
I would move forward with option number 2 that has been presented to us.
2 or 1?
No, I
Can we
think
go back?
the phased,
Okay.
the phased.
All right, that's number 1.
approach. Okay, option 1? Okay. Thank you for putting that back up, yeah. To move forward with that option to allow us to move forward in a phased fashion.
Okay. There's been a motion made by the mayor to start the project with a phased construction approach, that being identified as number 1. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Councilmember Duncan. Is there any further discussion before we take a vote? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioners Cook,
Yes.
Mays,
Yes.
Rippon,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Council Members Banks
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
Show that it passes.
Okay,
Our next item.
next item, item 4, Go Topeka Quarterly Update.
Before we go, Mr. Wenzel, I want to thank you for being here. I would also note that we do have a meeting in May, and I hope that we'll have more positive updates in May as to our progress, too. All right, thank you. All right, Molly, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Molly Howie, President of Go Topeka. We have a hot-off-the-press quarterly written report that's in your packet that is 2 weeks old. So our quarterly update this evening will be a little more brief than some that we usually do. But before we start that off, I would like to introduce our 2024 Chair of Go Topeka Board of Directors, Calla Haggard, President and CEO of Community Bank, to say a few words before we continue with our presentation.
Hello.
Morning.
I am Calla Haggard, lifelong Topekan, and President and CEO of Community Bank, and the Go Topeka Chair for 2024. Our Chair-elect is Neil Spencer with Ernest Spencer Metals, who was unable to be here today. I had 2 reasons for agreeing to be the Go Topeka Chair. One of those is that I have continually been impressed by Go Topeka and the partnership staff and their level of commitment to economic development in our county. And number 2 was to support small businesses in Shawnee County as they do drive the local economy. Go Topeka revenue remains flat, but there are efforts underway to use those dollars more efficiently, and I know that Molly is going to address some of that today. And in addition, there'll be more information to come about updating Go Topeka's strategic plan. Lastly, I appreciate each of you and your dedication to the local government in Shawnee County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kala. I think it's always good at the first meeting of the year to put a face with the name, since there are a lot of discussions like the one we had tonight that happened at our Go Topeka board. So again, since you have the quarterly report, I do want to hit on a few items before I bring the rest of the team up, just because we do have some members that are new to JEDO. So I'm going to do an abbreviated kind of Economic Development 101, just to kind of level set. But I'll also reach out to those new members to have more individual discussions and sort of a Go Topeka orientation, if you will, about our strategies in depth. So we have many focus areas within Go Topeka. You will hear from a few of them tonight, but here are the areas that you can expect to get reports about in JEDO communications: small business and entrepreneurship, equity and opportunity, existing business retention and expansion, workforce and talent, new business attraction, and of course, innovation. All of that is supported through data and analytics, which is a role that we have recently decided to absorb within the current talent that we have within the Greater Topeka Partnership. Now on to jobs. We talk a lot about jobs, and our work is always tied back to creating quality jobs. When we talk about job creation, we're talking almost solely about primary jobs. What that means is jobs in companies who import dollars into our community and create a much higher economic impact than others. The area that we do deviate from that slightly is with small business support, where retailers and service-related companies are included in our strategy. All of this is very standard within the economic development industry. And again, very brief, just kind of hitting some highlights, because those are a lot of times the topics that our conversation here centers around. As Kala briefly touched on, and as most of you know from our presentation at the December JEDO meeting, we're working on an in-depth assessment for activities in the Go Topeka strategy that support socially and economically disadvantaged and small businesses as well. We were able to have some very productive discussions with our team and Councilman Dobler to clarify some of the concerns that he addressed in the December meeting. We've had brainstorms with him to discuss a path forward, and really think we have some great ideas on the table. We've also had initial conversations with Mr. Lazone Grays, who I don't see here this evening, but wanted to just give him a shout out that we've had an initial meeting with him and do plan to have more. And also had initial discussions with both council for City of Topeka and Shawnee County. We're working together to take a look at the current language in the interlocal agreement regarding the 10% dedicated to socially and economically disadvantaged, and planning to refine that language and provide better clarity to all. So thanks to all that I just listed off, as it will take all of us to ensure that the intent of that language is clear and provides a strong foundation for us to deploy a refreshed strategy. If you'll remember, in December, I did talk about some of the items that have historically been in that department within the Go Topeka budget, and holding back on those a bit as we had this juncture with Glenda's recent retirement, and really assessing the resources that we deploy in the community and where gaps and overlaps may lie. So with regard to that specifically, we have engaged a well-known expert named SourceLink. It's an organization that works with a number of communities across the nation and specializes in asset mapping, and that will augment the work that we have already started, as well as other partners like OmniCircle, really doing an inventory about the resources and tools that exist in our community that help businesses to expand and continue to grow. So more information to come on that very soon, and we will extend an invitation to all of you to be a part of those discussions and brainstorming about what resources do exist and what you've heard from your constituents as far as needs that may not be met in the community. Lastly, the media coverage around Choose Topeka had a recent spike due to an article in the Wall Street Journal that we've been working on since the fall. And while the Wall Street Journal article and last week's News Nation coverage were great, some of the spin-off media was not quite accurate and actually blatantly false and painted us in a negative light. But through all of that rhetoric, it was great to see positive comments to support the work that we're all doing around workforce development and ensuring that we continue to be a welcoming community. So thank you to the mayor, the city attorney, city communications team, all for helping to field inquiries and clarify the message. So I will stand for questions, but of course I'm here. And next up is Ashley Lehman.
Questions for Molly?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh. I think it might be Stephanie, so let's take a look. I did forget this. We promised we would have this dashboard at the beginning of every meeting. It's in your packet, so I didn't want to speak to it too much, but these are those numbers and metrics that we are tracking. And as a reminder, it's an aggregate of all of the activities within Go Topeka. So you'll see total capital investment numbers, total job numbers, total projects, and that's everything from small businesses that we're helping to existing businesses and new business attraction as well. So if there are questions on this, I would stand for this.
I just might note, Molly, I appreciate the brevity and paper generated, but at the same time, boy, that print is awful small, so I appreciate you having a slide.
Yeah, no problem.
So,
All right, well, Stephanie Norwood was supposed to be here to speak on small business incentives, but unfortunately is not feeling well today, so I'm going to step in for her today and give you a quick update on where we are with small business incentives. We wanted to introduce kind of a new map that we're looking at as we go through this part of our asset mapping process as well. One of the things that we added to our rubric as we started evaluating these businesses with our Small Business Incentives Committee is looking at the community health map to understand where these businesses are located and using that as one of the metrics that are evaluated as part of that process. So looking back into 2022 and overlaying kind of our incentives map with that community health map, you can see that we've got a pretty good dispersity throughout the community, some out in the county, and then those red and pink zones are kind of our intensive care and at-risk neighborhoods. So you'll see where we've got some clusters in those areas, but a pretty good dispersity throughout the community in 2022. As we move into 2023, I really wanted to showcase we've gotten some better outreach. We've done a lot of marketing to the different communities. The word is getting out throughout various channels. We've done a lot of initiatives where we've reached out to some of our Spanish-speaking communities. We've offered sessions in Spanish on the Small Business Incentives Program that we've spoken about previously. We've been working with our OmniCircle partners as well as other community centers to really get the word out and make sure that people know these incentives are out there and available. And we've really seen an uptick in the number of applications that we are receiving across the community and even throughout the county. So you'll see that we've got a much broader disbursement throughout the county, but really a strong amount of incentives going into these at-risk and intensive care neighborhoods to the tune of, if we look at in 2023, 101 businesses received incentives. 39 of those were in intensive care or at-risk neighborhoods. So we're seeing about 39% of those incentives going to business owners in those areas, as well as 39% of the funding. So 194,000 went into intensive care neighborhoods, and there's another 30,000 going into at-risk. So you're seeing a pretty good expenditure of those incentives going into these neighborhoods, helping drive economic development, helping businesses grow and or establish in those neighborhoods and provide services that may not be there. Looking into then kind of what that looks like across the types. Construction continues to be our largest with equipment. Construction industry is one of our largest industries at 18%. And then you'll see other services. This really involves a lot of small businesses. This could be hair salons, this kind of sole proprietorships. This is what kind of falls into that bucket. You'll see a 17% there. Accommodation and food services, healthcare, retail trade. So you're seeing a pretty good disbursement across the types of businesses that we're receiving requests from. LLCs, S-corps. Then as we kind of look into our demographics, Of those 101, we see 25 minority-owned businesses, 40 women-owned businesses, 5 veteran and 2 disabled, and 5 SBA certified businesses that have applied and received incentives. You can see the percentage breakdowns as we look at that. We really saw a strong application increase in Q3 and Q4 across our minority sectors, and so we expect that to continue into early this year. We actually just closed the window for the current incentives window. Those will be awarded out by the end of the month. The committee meets here in the next week or so, and so those will go out, and we'll have updated numbers for you as we go into May. For anyone who has constituents asking, the next window closes May 6th, so if anyone's looking for incentives or you have constituents, please send them our way. We were happy to have conversations with them, explain the process, walk them through what needs to happen to apply for those. From an overall type of incentives, equipment is our largest request. About half of our funding has gone to equipment. Construction and renovation follows closely. You will see a couple of combo lines down here where there's construction, renovation, architect, and design. Those were where companies requested multiple incentives, and so those kind of pulled together as we ran the metrics out of our new system. We are also seeing some increases in our innovation sectors, proof of concept, and professional services and global markets that we'll talk about here in just a second as well. So we're really seeing some strong applications coming through. I did want to talk about, I think Councilman Dobler had brought this up at one of our previous in December. So in 2023, we approved $565,000 in incentives. We've had a few of those returned, but right around that amount. Based on the applications that the businesses submit, as well as those that have been completed, the total business investment going back on that is $3.6 million. So you're seeing about a 546% return on that investment. About 25% of the projects are complete to date. So as we get those completed projects in, we'll continue to update these numbers. But we're seeing really strong investment from these business owners back into the community on top of what we're awarding through this incentives program. We don't have any of our small business recipients here today with the time change and Valentine's Day. That kind of threw us off as well a little bit. But just some of the recent site visits that we've conducted were Weaver Solutions, which was equipment, Rising Soul Ceramics, and Falk Architects with their Noto office, as well as an interesting one. Atlantis LLC is actually a fragrance company, so you'll see kind of the fragrance bottle. That one was actually one of our innovations where they're developing a new fragrance, and so we're helping with some of the regulatory on that, as well as their marketing that will be coming out for that new fragrance. So that's kind of a new and interesting one for us. Happy to answer any questions on
Any
small
questions
business.
for Stephanie Moran, speaking for Stephanie Norwood? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. I do have, actually, I don't know if these are questions or kind of like requests.
Yep.
I know that you're acting instead for someone, but I want to know if we can get access to slides, those slides.
Sure.
And also, is it possible, I'm still trying to get a feel for, since we have county and city officials here, it would be interesting to me, since I'm District 2.
Yep.
And it is considered an LMI district. We have a number of at-risk, and we have one section that is in intensive care. So is there the possibility to get this broken down by council level? Is that an appropriate question to ask?
It's appropriate.
Yeah.
It is? It is appropriate?
Yeah,
Okay.
let us go back and take a look at that. I don't see any issue with us doing that, so I think that's certainly something we can do.
Okay, and then I would definitely like to sit down and talk about this to get a feel for what this program is about.
Great.
So that's it. Thank you.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor, I might add, it's a number of times I know that the Go Topeka staff, Stephanie Norwood, the small business, whether any area, if you have a NIA or a group or a meetings, they're always available to come and do presentations. And I know that a lot of times getting the information into the hands of the people in the public, that's great.
And I will offer that, like I said, we have done some Spanish language classes, because we know that we have individuals that have some of those language barriers, and I do have a couple of bilingual associates on staff who can help with those meetings as well.
Well, just to comment back at that, yeah, I understand the Spanish language, is definitely vital, and I think that that's a lot in Councilwoman, Ortiz's district and an area that I'm
But no, we're,
with a lot of NOTO business,
Yep.
small businesses in that area and into Oakland, so.
and NOTO has been a very strong, I've got several NOTOs, so, but no,
Okay.
we're happy to come out to any of the associations, community centers. If we need to do informational sessions, our team's very happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councilman Duncan?
Thank you. This is more of a comment. I've said this before. I will say it again. I've had conversations with the other Stephanie, I guess, as
Yes.
we are at the moment about
Sorry.
this. I serve on the Small Business Council, and this is not a criticism of anyone who's getting money now. But there are several definitions of a small business. The federal definition is up to 500. The state pulls that in and then also uses 100 or could be $1 million plus. I would like to see us as a group go back and look at what our own definition of a small business would be, because I think that certainly if you have a business with 10 employees competing against a business with 400 employees and both are classified as small businesses, that's not really, I think, the intent of what some of these dollars were for in our community. And again, not criticizing who's been given, but I'd like to go back in and look at those again and clarify them so that we can continue to protect that money is exclusive to true small businesses in the community and doesn't sometimes accidentally get to a bigger corporation. So, like I said, I hope to further those conversations, but just wanted to put it out in the universe once again. Thank you.
Commissioner Rippon?
Yes, are any of these small business incentives used for infrastructure? Say you have a business, you need a water line across the street or something. Has any been used for that?
Not as part of the small business program. I know there are some conversations amongst that 10% interlocal, if what exactly qualifies under that. And I think those will be some of the things that we'll be fleshing out as part of the asset mapping of what that funding is intended to do.
Any other questions? Councilmember Hiller?
2 questions, please. Whoop.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Okay, I didn't know if you needed to finish some answer. 2 questions. One, I think a short one. If I live on the east side and then I set up my business at 12th and Gage, where does my dot go?
The dot is the business address.
Okay.
And
So correspondingly then, if I'm anybody from wherever and I set up in Noto, my dot goes in Noto.
right. And there is we've had conversations on that as well, but the intent is for the business address. It is, where's that business address being located, and what neighborhood is that benefiting?
Okay.
And then back to Commissioner Rippon, the cap on our incentives is a $15,000 match. So when you're talking sewer lines and some of those things, that may extend beyond what we're.
I don't know if you want to. I'm sorry. I was meaning to answer Councilman Duncan's question about the size of businesses. A 400-person employee business wouldn't fall in small business.
No. Wrong question.
All right.
Our small business incentives is 100 employees or less currently.
My other question was,
Yes.
and Molly, tell me if I'm premature on this, but I've been chatting with Molly for a couple of years now about whether we're recalibrating how we measure success of small businesses. For a long time, success was measured just by how many new employees you had and how much growth you'd had. But when you have a sole proprietorship, that goal is different. So I wondered if you have done that recalibrating yet for success measurement.
Those are all part of what as we go back to these businesses, and what we're doing is sending them an evaluation a year after they've received the incentive. And those are some of the questions that we're asking is not only what are the jobs, additional services, but what's your success been with receiving those incentives? So has it helped you to continue to, keep your business in its current location? What are the things, I think the things that you're talking about is, what is your success measurement on those incentives that you received?
Well, it wasn't even necessarily tied to the incentives per se, but, what's your goal? Be a sole proprietor and make $100,000 a year, grow your business and have 12 employees and have a gross of a couple $1 million a year. And then how are you doing on your goals
Okay.
is more what I had in
A lot of them
mind.
do address that in their incentive application. They will say, what the funds are being requested for and what they'll be used for and why that will help move their business forward, if it's removing a barrier or creating a growth opportunity. So a lot of them do address that on the forefront when they're requesting incentive dollars too. So then when we're going back and talking with them a year later, we're saying, okay, what were you able to accomplish? Did you accomplish what you had listed in your application? And what also over and above did you accomplish? Because to Stephanie's point about earlier, they may be requesting matching funds, and if their cap is $15,000, that doesn't mean that they're only investing $30,000. A lot of
Right.
times they're investing a lot more than that.
Just checking.
Number. So let me ask the clarifying question to you. So would you like us to be asking that of the small business community in general to get those answers, I guess, not just the incentives?
I guess for
recipients?
me, yeah, I mean, that when you're looking at, and I'm from the nonprofit background, we've been drilled in outcomes for a long time, okay? And so that's, why are you doing this? What's your goal? And to me, the measure of success is not whether somebody meets the goal I had for them.
Right.
But what was your goal? Have you met or exceeded your goal? Naturally, I suppose all of us in this room would hope that they had surprised themselves and had exceeded their personal goals and have now set a new one. But if we weren't measuring that way, we didn't know.
Okay,
So that's where,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
Hello, I am Ashley Lehman, Director of Business Development for Go Topeka. I was going to start with a 2023 recap of the new business attraction pipeline, but before that, because we have new members, just want to give you a brief explanation of what this pipeline includes. So this is all for new business attraction. These are companies that are outside of our community looking to grow. We get RFPs submitted to us by KDC, the Kansas Department of Commerce, and then also KCADC, which is the Kansas City Area Development Council, because we do fall into their MSA. So usually we'll get an RFP with a project name already given. This is due for confidentiality reasons, and they're asking basic questions about building needs, acreage, things like that. So then I'll submit either properties or acreage based on their needs. It can be anywhere as simple as a flyer for a property, or I've had one that's over 26 pages that are really deep diving into wetlands and topography and all of those things. There's really no rhyme or reason. It just depends on where the company is in their journey. From there, if one of our sites are selected, then a site visit is scheduled, and then we continue down the selection process. So in 2023, we had 43 projects that were submitted to us. That's right in line with 2022, which is great. As you can see, a wide variety of different industries were included in that. And then in that 43 that we received, 25 we were able to submit. 8 we lost due to various reasons, whether that was a competing location or specific requirements. And then there were 18 that we were not able to submit. A large part of this was due to acreage. One was chemically suspicious, and then really it's the requirements that they're needing specifically with the utility really just can't be met with the timelines that they're needing, the large power. Most of those that came through were looking for 50 megawatts up to 500 megawatts. And speaking with KDC and just area economic development organizations, they really don't see a decrease in those power needs going down. I believe that that's why that there was a House bill that was submitted that's really going to look at that infrastructure and how Kansas can stay competitive with those large projects coming through. So for 2024, so far right now, we have 29 active projects, wide range of industries. We have 2 potential site visits in March. And then we do have one next week with a project that we were shortlisted for that came through KCADC. We've been working with a local commercial realtor here in Topeka, and they'll be accompanying us on that site visit. So we're really looking forward to that and seeing how that progresses. I'd be happy to take any questions or pass it along to Trina.
Questions for Ms. Lehman? Seeing none, thank you.
Hello, I'm Trina Goss. I'm the Director of Business and Talent Initiatives with Go Topeka. Before I jump into the first item on my list, I wanted to share a story. I was at an event today, and one of the projects that has been supported through Go Topeka incentives connected with me and said that last year they had a 40% growth, and the year before that they had a 20% growth. And they want to thank all of you and Go Topeka for supporting their projects because it is definitely paying off for them.
Thank you.
Okay, so you should all have a copy of the workforce report. This is something I had briefly mentioned at the December meeting. Today, I'm not going to go through the entire report and all of the data because that would take a lot of time, but I am going to hit on a few key items. And then when you have the opportunity to look through this in your own time, if you have questions or input or feedback or anything you would like to share, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to meet with you or answer your questions via email or phone call. Again, for those of you that are new, this is the first time we have issued this report. So there may be information that you would like to see that's not in the report. So please share that with me and we'll include it in the next go around. So this data that is included in this is pulled from a variety of sources, including Jobs EQ, the American Community Survey, and the Kansas Department of Labor. The recentness of some of the data, it varies. Some of it is as recent as the fourth quarter of 2023. Some of it is as old as 2020. There's only one item that's that old, and I'll touch on that when we get to it. So starting on page 5, the workforce data on page 5 is also included in your quarterly report. I want to note the labor force participation rate. So Shawnee County's participation rate is almost equal to the state percentage, but is around 4 percentage points higher than the national level. What a labor force participation rate includes is the number of people who are currently in the workforce working and those who are actively seeking employment. So that doesn't include those who are retired, who just choose not to work, or who are students, children. So the unemployment rate in Shawnee County that shows on this report, and as of the date of this report, was 2.9% in Topeka and 2.7% in Shawnee County. However, the most recent data is 2.1% in Shawnee County, with just under 2,000 people unemployed within the county. If we skip to page 8, the next several pages from page 8 and on provide information on diversity within certain occupations based on age, gender, education level, ethnicity, and race. Each occupation also shows the forecasted growth and unemployment rate for its category, as well as the average wage. This report will be provided to employers throughout Shawnee County, both via email and then as I meet with them throughout the year. I think this diversity report will be very helpful for them as they're working to improve diversity within their organizations. And it's also very interesting, I think. Page 14, we'll skip to that. That shows the number of open jobs in Shawnee County as of January 15th of this year, and is broken down by occupations, titles, education requirements, job types, and programs. So as you see, as of January 15th, we had 5,408 job postings, and again, we have a little less than 2,000 unemployed within Shawnee County. We will skip again to page 16 and 17. This shows equal pay for men and women. Equal pay for men and women is sometimes a hot topic in the world of workforce. It comes up from time to time. It'll be in the media and a number of other conversations. So this shows how the Topeka MSA falls with equal pay. Compared to the state numbers, which are not included in this report, the state only shows one category where women are equal or higher paid than men, and that's in construction. A lot of speculation is because that, it's unionized and might have more set wages. In Topeka, our MSA is doing much better with 10 occupations with equal or higher pay, and many more that are very close to that. On page 21, I'll skip there as well. Okay, page 21. So since COVID, remote work has become more and more popular, as we all know, with many companies offering hybrid work situations or have gone fully remote. Shawnee County has seen a 193% change in remote work since before the pandemic. And then the commuter trends on the right side of page 21. This is the 2020 data that I was talking about. But it's still interesting to see the number of people who commute into Topeka for work, which at that time was 40% of our workforce, and where they're coming from. Interesting to me that our second highest number of people are coming from Wichita. So they're driving 2 hours to work in Topeka. And then finally, the last few pages are information from the Department of Labor. Each of these reports shows a comparison of men and women in STEM careers throughout the state of Kansas. Studies have shown that from a very young age, girls are often steered away from STEM careers and in certain other directions for their future career, aside from healthcare. We are piloting the Wise Women program, which is my next slide, to create opportunities for young women to explore opportunities in STEM. So Wise Women is a 6-month mentorship program where we are connecting high school girls who are interested in STEM careers with female mentors who already work in those occupations. We are kicking off on February 29th, and we have 10 women from various industries who are super excited to work with these girls. We have an equal number of girls, and I was invited to Topeka High, Shawnee Heights, and Highland Park to share the program with classes there. And then I also have people at Topeka West and Auburn Washburn that have shared the programs with their students. And I'm happy to say, although our pilot number is small with 10 girls, they are from every high school, every public high school in Topeka. This program will consist of one-on-one mentorship, group sessions to talk about essential skills. They'll go on field trips to explore STEM careers. The mentors are encouraged to offer job shadowing opportunities and potentially internships in the summer. So very excited about this program. And they will have a graduation in June with a dinner where they'll get to get dressed up and really be recognized for their accomplishments. Finally, just an update on the child care initiative. So as a reminder, all of the child care initiatives that we are supporting right now are funded by an accelerator grant that was provided with a partnership from the Kansas Children's Cabinet and the Department for Children and Families. The Greater Topeka Partnership has received $3.1 million to support these initiatives, and we are supporting 9 child care expansion projects to open 451 additional slots. We are also creating a talent pipeline for child care workers, offering hiring incentives, hiring bonuses, and then working with all of the providers on business plans so that they're able to offer a living wage to their child care workers versus the average $10.14 that the state of Kansas currently has for workers. On February 22nd, next week, we are hosting an employer information session at Celtic Fox. And at that session, employers will learn about a number of ways that they can support childcare for their employees. They'll learn how the lack of available childcare and how the lack of affordable childcare can affect their workforce, can make it hard for them to find talent. And then we'll walk them through the employer roadmap that was provided by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation on ways that employers can support childcare. So I'll stand for any questions.
Questions, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions, well, maybe 3. Okay, so this is the first time you've done this?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks really good, really wonderful information that I'm going to go over. But the other question is, where all is this sent to? How are you pushing this out?
So it was printed last week. I will be sending it out via email to all of our employers. And I do have an electronic copy that I could send to all of you as well. And then just as we are meeting with employers, we'll cover some of the information.
Well, because I think that this is also important information for some average Joe kind of people that aren't a part of employers So I'll get with you about that on some suggestions that I have. But then you said childcare workers and, supporting, promoting that living wage. What is it determined? Everything that I'm going by is the 2019 housing study, which it isn't taking in, is dated information. And I think when it came to housing here, 2-bedroom, it was needing a wage of like $16.81 or something like that. So what are you guys considering?
So that's the most recent information I have too, is $16.43 in Shawnee County.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? There's a lot to digest in this, so thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, that concludes our quarterly report.
Any other questions for Molly or anybody else that you've had a chance to think about? Okay.
Thank you.
Our next item.
Item 5, public comment.
We do have 3 people signed up for public comment. The first is Mr. McClure, if you are here.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's difficult when you have an idea that's against such nice people. And I think maybe in my 18 years outside Topeka and living in 11 different towns, working for a multi-million-dollar mall developer, that I've seen things done differently. And trying to introduce a new idea in Topeka, Kansas is a little difficult. You ruffle feathers, you say the wrong thing. And, but in the spirit of the whole idea, today it's about accountability. And if you go back to what the voters voted on, as far as in the interlocal agreement, that the money was going to be used for infrastructure, the money was going to be used for economic development, and quality of life. So you could probably take any idea what was floating around and make it qualify under that. But what I'm seeing right now is that we really need to redirect some of the overhead that we've got for this project and start putting it into infrastructure. What was interesting today, you basically have funded a developer. Well, hey, man, maybe I got a chance. But Topeka, what they like to do is pick the winners. And that's our downfall. That is our downfall in this town, is not letting the market decide. Deals at some point in time have to stand on their own. I think that this group is for when a developer walks in and says, something dealing with the system in this town has made this deal not make sense and I need some help. And I think that's what that economic development money was for. So wait a minute, the system itself is making it not pencil, but I got a deal that makes sense, so help me out. And I've had trouble interacting. I've never had a deal that qualified. So they're your contractor, and they can say jobs all day long, and they can say nice things, and create these warm and fuzzy things, but it comes down to accountability to this group. I think you made a mistake today throwing good money after bad. As far as the overall contractor goes, your Go Topeka, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But at some point in time, maybe you've got to start saying, some of these expenses don't make sense. The one thing that just stands out more than anything is $643,259 in grants. Grants, sponsors, contributions, and scholarships. Where is that economic development? We didn't hire, you didn't hire them to be a grant doler-outer. And the voters didn't give you control of our economic development funds to hire a contractor to dole out money. So what we need to do is it's what did you know and when did you know it? Because it's, the people are listening. Some people are saying, Henry, you say what I'm thinking. And sometimes that's good. But we've got to use these as benchmarks, because if the voter can't control your contractor, they're good people. They're nice people. They're just doing what you told them to, or what,
Mr. McClure, that's the end of your 4 minutes.
or whatever Jim Klossman told them to tell you. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is James Bolden.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. First, I want to give honor to the mayor, city of Topeka, Shawnee County Commissioner, and the entire JEDO board. Truly is an honor to come before the leaders of our community, have a forum to speak of my concerns. I am the eldest son of what most people recognize as Jim Bolden. I worked alongside my father for many years. If I asked my father why he did not increase my pay, he would say, son, I'm giving you the training. Those of you who do not know my father, he retired from Mid-America Aviation after working his business for 36 years. I don't know if you know, but my father died 2 years ago. I was always worked for himself with opportunities to help many businesses on the Wanamaker corridor. He was over at the SBA program. Father was a leader in Topeka who served as a delegate for the state of Kansas, worked closely with former Governor Mike Hayden, Bob Dole, Sam Brow. Beck served on the Rotary Board and many other boards in his lifetime. He's hired key individuals to work for his company, like retired Judge Joe Johnson, many more. Our time is so limited, so I want to get straight to the topic. I'm gonna skip some items because we're over today. My conversation today with Mr. Josh Patterson, he made me aware that the city gives $5 million to Go Topeka every year, which means $500,000 would be the amount to go socioeconomic underdeveloped businesses. It's about $9 million raised yearly. Downtown Topeka, Go Topeka, Greater Topeka Partnership, these are the nonprofit entities overseeing half-cent sales tax. Line item for socially economic development business. Talked to Josh Patterson, who is CFO, indicated the city of Topeka gives downtown Topeka, Go Topeka Partnership the funds to manage. $16 million sitting in the kitty. I cannot get a loan for $10,000. We're taking a big hit in 2021 working in Fort Riley. We worked for many general contractors in the past, construction, 20 years experience. We performed final cleans. General contractor at the time, MW Builders out of Texas. They had an inexperienced project manager, young man. This was during the COVID, a lot of men died. It cost us about $14,000 from our checking account to stay afloat. We needed to use our credit cards to help cushion some of the fallout. To conclude, we are now asking for a $20,000 grant to help us with the losses we incurred. As we never received the COVID funds, this would show that you care about our business to support what we are doing. Also remember, this is Black History Month. I would like to make one recommendation. And that recommendation is based on the fact that I am a human being.
Is there a motion to extend?
So moved.
Motion made by the mayor to extend for how long?
How much time would you?
I'm about done concluding.
2 minutes.
Is there a second? Can I do just a voice? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Show that it passes.
I would like to make one recommendation, and that is based on the fact that I've been in business for 20 years. So we've cleaned carpet all throughout Topeka. There's somebody in this room, I've cleaned their carpets and their families. Somebody in this room, I've cleaned their carpets. We were in Fort Riley in 2004. We had a $150,000 contract. We had 30 employees. We've employed hundreds of people. But during the COVID, we've had to make smart moves, manage the business, and lay people off. And a lot of the work I had to do myself. That's why I created sciatica. So I am making a recommendation that because the 10%, everybody has a different idea. It was when we, in 2001, said the 10%, I was looking at it, we were looking at it as for minority disadvantaged businesses. So I would recommend that you remove the money from the chamber regarding the 10%, helping minorities to a different location with people who have a track record of running a small business, like myself. She made a very good point. You need 2 or 3 people, you need 4 people or something before you can apply, and there's so many, you move the goal line and there's so many defaults. I'm one of those that make $80,000 and $100,000 a year. Okay? I have no problem sharing that. Honest people that are above reproach. So that's my recommendation, that you put the minority money, 10%, somewhere where when I call and say, I want to talk to your supervisor, you'll respect me, and you let me talk to your supervisor, not ignore me like you did. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Our final speaker that signed up tonight is Mr. Kurt Kuda. Nope. He's not here, so that.
He wasn't able to attend, but if I may request, I would like to respond to Mr. McClure's comment about the line item about grants, if that's allowed.
Any objection? Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Mulhowie?
So the line item that Mr. McClure was referring to in our 2024 budget, that's $643,000 and some change, that is titled Grants, Contributions, and Scholarships, is an item that we did discuss in the December budget presentation, as well as in individual meetings with you all. And it includes investments like Washburn Tech and Washburn Tech East scholarships that we have done for a number of years. It also includes the Choose Topeka incentives that were approved and are now been earned to be paid out in this year. It also includes investments in the Forge Young Talent Program. And also I wanted to note that in the back of your quarterly report, there's a new robust report from Forge as well as pitch competition investments and investments in our partners that Ashley Lehman mentioned that are lead generators with Team Kansas through the Department of Commerce and KCADC, the Kansas City Area Development Council.
Thank you.
Stand for any questions.
Any questions? Molly, just in relating to our second speaker, Mr. Bolden's comments, at our meeting in May, can we have a presentation from Go Topeka and maybe also some input from our legal counsel, Mr. Eckert, regarding the 10% that goes towards small business, economic development, and minority, the MDB, all the initials.
Right.
How that is being administered, what that looks like, recommendations if we do need to make some changes to that model, so that it is more addressed and kept pace. So
Yep, we'd be happy to do that.
I would like to see a presentation on that at the May meeting. Sure. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Howie? Okay. Is there any public comment from, I guess, from our members? Anything else you would want to see at the next meeting, which is in May? If you have any ideas after today, please email myself or Molly Halley or Tabitha so that it can be added as an agenda item. Our next item.
Item 6, a reminder of the 2024 JEDO board meetings. We have May 8th, September 11th, and December 11th.
Before we proceed, we are required to have quarterly meetings. Does anyone have a conflict or know of a holiday that occurs on May the 8th, September the 11th outside of Memorial, and December the 11th? I'd like to keep us on track. So our next meeting then would be May the 8th at 5. Our regular time is 6, sorry. Let's see. I'm off kilter. 6 p.m., May the 8th, and that will be at the City Council chambers. So, our next item?
Item 7, adjournment.
We are done.